Good evening. I thought you might have missed me, so in the Department of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, we are very fortunate to have highly talented special projects directors, each of whom are in charge of facilitating the work of our critical district priorities and related plans. This evening, I'm proud to introduce one of them, Mrs. Miriam Lidman, who is our special projects director for literacy, and she will be taking you through the legal requirements and our specific data and plans of action related to Move On and Reading.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Wagner, Dr. Boyle, and audience. And I'm apologizing in advance for my voice. That's what happens when you try out for American Idol and don't make it. Kidding, no. It's been 2 weeks like this. I am pleased to present to you information regarding the Move On When Reading legislation and actions that we as a district will continue to take to address our K-3 population. So when you look at this quote, that learning to read well is a key to the future success of our children, not only is reading fluently with comprehension by 3rd grade a legislated priority, it is an ethical and professional imperative. As a literacy special projects director, it has been something that is a passion of mine, and we know from all of the research that it starts at K-3, that if we don't catch those children before they fall, it's going to be really difficult to get them to the place where they are achieving, especially now with our Common Core. So, knowing that, the Move On When Reading law took place, and the law says that all schools will have competency requirements for the promotion of pupils in 3rd grade, incorporating academic standards in all areas. In other words, if the kids are reading below grade level, if they are substantially below, they are not going to pass 3rd grade. And that has significant impact for all of our students. And it also talks about the successor test, so it's not just if they are below in Ames, but it's below in any successor test. And successor test means part assessment. There are some exceptions to the rules, so here are some of those exceptions. So one, if the child is a child with a disability and did not take the Ames to measure the standards or the successor test, that would be one exception where they would be promoted to the next grade level. 2, the pupil is a child with a disability and has taken the Ames and or a successor test and has been previously retained in a grade level. That child would then go on to 4th grade. A student who is an English learner or limited English proficient student might be exempt if he or she has had fewer than 2 years of English language instruction, and that is 2 complete full years. So if they are 3rd graders, if they came to this country and they were in school all of 2nd grade and all of 3rd grade, that would constitute 2 full grade levels. Another exemption might be if a student has had a reading deficiency and has been previously retained twice in a grade. Can't imagine in this day and age that we have children who have been retained twice in a grade. I know that that is not the case in our district, so thankfully that is not one of those exceptions that we need to worry about. Another one is if the pupil has demonstrated reading proficiency on an alternate assessment approved by the State Board of Education. To my knowledge, there is no alternate assessment that has been designated as of yet, but I know that they're working on it because it is part of the law. And then last but not least, that the school district governing board might accept a parent's request for an exception for a pupil who does not meet any of the other 5 previously exemptions. So looking at this law, what would it look like if this had been the 2013 school year and Move On with Reading had taken effect. So thank you to my colleague, Dr. Lauren. He pulled up this 2013 reading, which I think you have seen in previous presentations. And as you see, in the Bowles Below category, 68 students would have been retained had the law taken effect this past year.
Miriam, does that mean that those 68, none of them met any of the good cause exemptions?
We did not research that far back, so I don't know. My very best guess is that they probably all 68 would have been retained. Good question, though. So before we had this law about Move On with Reading, we actually had a law to really start working on getting like I said, my passion of K-3, of getting a comprehensive system so that we would make sure that we reached all of our students and we would make sure that they would be in compliance and being able to be proficient readers. So adopted in 2002, it created this law that said we needed to have a comprehensive K-3 assessment system, that we needed to have a research-based reading curriculum, we needed to have explicit instruction in reading, and with all of that, we needed to have ongoing professional development. And if students were falling behind, we needed to have intensive intervention. So we're going to take each one of these one at a time, and we're going to talk about what we are doing. So when we're looking at our K-3 assessment system, we have a variety of ways in which we assess our students, starting with STEAM Universal Screeners in math and reading for grades K-8. And specific in K-3, we are looking and reading at the oral reading fluency, and I'm going to, in a few slides, we're going to talk about why that's so important. STEAM measures are given to all students 3 times a year, and then third graders are given a one-on-one oral reading fluency passage. So it's not a whole, there's no guessing, that there's somebody sitting right beside them listening to them read. We use common formative assessments to guide instruction, and then we have progress monitoring tools that are used to determine entry, movement, and exit from intervention programs. So those universal screeners to identify students at risk, back to that overall wide assessment, we have beginning, middle, and end year norms. And those norms are based on national population of students tested. And students who score in the below average constitute approximately the bottom 25% of the students that are being tested in that population. That data was from STEEP, is thousands of students across 21 states, and those norms are reflected the status of how students are reading. So when I talked about oral reading fluency and why that was so important, and you think back to the quote right at the front that it talked about fluency and comprehension, there's a very strong correlation between oral reading fluency and success on AIMS, which primarily focuses on comprehension. So if it's third graders who read 110 to 120 words per minute, and that is correct words per minute, there is a 79% probability of meeting or exceeding on the AIMS. If students are reading 121 to 133 words per minute, that jumps to 86% of probability of meeting or exceeding on the AIMS. And if students are reading 134 to 140 words per minute, there's a 91% probability of meeting or exceeding on the AIMS. And understanding that relationship between ORF and the predictability on AIMS is so important as we look at our universal screeners to determine who is at risks and what steps we can take to prevent our students from falling behind. So what does our data, our STEEP data indicate? So we gave this STEEP screener to all of our students, and once again, they were all reading fluency, they're one-on-one. So I'd like to look at this really quickly. This is our third grade full screener, and as you can see at the bottom by the schools, how many actual students were below that below average In other words, they are at risk.
And are those numbers or percents? I'm sorry.
They're actual numbers of students. Yeah, they're not percents. If you would like, I can get you the norms, but those are just actual number of students. If we looked at second grade, because we are projecting that we need to make sure that at K3 we're really strengthening our reading program, and we look at our second grades. Our second grade program, and it really should be red on the bottom, but it's not. I apologize for the color change, but the bottom is still the bottom of below average. And as you can see, we have a challenge in second grade, and that's something that we are addressing. And as you heard all of our principals today, there's a huge focus on guided reading to make sure that we are meeting those students at their grade level while also acquiring the foundational skills, but also acquiring the core, which is at a much higher level. So back to the law, so we talked about the comprehensive assessment system, and now we're going to talk about the research-based reading curriculum. So this year especially, our units of study, I am proud to say, are totally integrated and aligned to the Arizona Common Core. Meaning that before we had reading and we had a little bit of writing, but this year as you look at our units, they really have a balance of reading, writing, listening, speaking, and language, which went to one of the questions that you had about how are we going to teach grammar. Grammar is actually embedded in all of our units of study. The English language curriculum is also aligned to the ELP standards. So when you go online and you look at our units of study, not only do we have the English language arts, but right next to it we have the ELP standards, so that an English language teacher really knows that what she's teaching really is supporting our ELA units of study. There's also a balance of literature and informational standards that can be found in all of our ELA units, which is that is the number one key shift in the Common Core. So when we look at explicit instruction, what are the steps that we are taking to ensure that all of our students are reaching that goal of not just being below, but really at or above? So the first thing is that we have a Tier 1 core reading program, and all students receive core reading instruction. In the past, we had the core instruction was for anybody who was not a Tier 3 student. Our Tier 3 students, and I'll go a little bit more into that, they were receiving interventions and not necessarily receiving first-time instruction in the classroom. So this year, everybody receives core. So we have core plus and we have core plus plus to make sure that we are really differentiating and meeting the needs of all of our students. Our master course schedule is focused on 90 minutes daily of reading and language arts in the mainstream classrooms. And as you can see, it's 240 minutes of daily instruction, because that's our 4-hour block for our ELD students. And when you break it down, it's really our English language arts, just spread out over the course of 4 hours. And then there's 45 minutes of daily differentiated instruction, or as I love what Mr. Geyer said today, acceleration for all students, so that no matter where they're at, those 45 minutes are addressing the needs of each and every child to move them forward. As we look at and focus on instruction, we are making sure that we are addressing the needs of all by doing whole and small group instruction. And there is going to be PD on close reading. That's not something that we have done in the past, but we are definitely moving towards that. And as you heard, all of our leadership teams talk about guided reading and leveled reading, foundational skills and literacy centers, and you cannot have guided reading without literacy centers. So we are definitely going to be addressing that. Whoops, I'm sorry. So in the law, again, it talks about professional development. So So the things that we are doing is we are offering K-3 academies. Last year we offered K-3 academies to all K-3 teachers. And this year the K-3 academies are really going to be for new teachers and or new teachers new to the grade level. And in them they're going to be receiving information on foundational routines, which are phonological awareness, phonics, and high-frequency words. They're going to receive information on how to plan and deliver guided reading lessons, and then through the use of interactive read-alouds, how to begin close reading, and close reading for the second and third, not just the interactive read-alouds. So the interactive read-alouds are more for the K-1 students and K-1 teachers. And these all these K-3 academies will be supported on site by the principals and coaches and SATs and Title I facilitators, in which they're going to receive, they already have from last year, they have a look force, so as they go into the classrooms, they can really provide feedback and support that is timely to what they are learning at that time. Last but not least, we're talking about intensive intervention as required by the law. So as I said before, we have Core and then we have Core Plus. So Core Plus is for students who are Tier 2. In Tier 2, the definition is 1 to 2 years below grade level, as evidenced by our screeners and diagnostic testing. So the reading interventionists and or SPED teachers with reading endorsements group students with similar instructional needs. The intervention programs that are used are research-based and focus on foundational skills and or comprehension skills if that's what's needed. So in the case of a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade student, they may not need foundational skills, they may need comprehension skills. And so a program such as Rewards and Rewards Plus is one that has a combination of narrative and expository text, but mostly expository text. And then Tier 3, which is 60 to 90 minutes, otherwise known as Core Plus Plus. And again, we have the reading interventionists and SPED teachers who are pulling small groups of students with like needs, and those intervention programs are research-based and focus on skills that are needed for those students. And those are determined by the diagnostic screeners after that ISTEEP screener. They really do a dig down and find out exactly what is causing the students not to be where they need to be. And the interventions provide additional opportunities to interact with narrative and expository text. So how are we engaging our community? One of the ways in which we're doing that is we have a letter that actually went out this week on the Move On When Reading to parents of K-3 and 3rd grade students, just letting them know that this is the law and this is what, just alerting them about what, and we have been doing that for the last fourth year. This is the 4th year that we have sent one. This year, in addition though, we are really going to start targeting those 3rd grade parents. So a letter to parents of at-risk 3rd grade students concerning the Move On When Reading will go out next week. And then as a follow-up, we're going to meet with those parents individually using community ed as a liaison. We're going to pull those small groups of parents to really give them some tools because we need them as partners. We can't do it alone. We need them as partners. So we're going to give them some tools in which they can help us. We actually began that last year, and we told the parents at the time, expect to see us often. And that's a promise that I intend to keep. So those are the things that we are doing to engage our community. We're probably going to also have a separate and focused APTT with the parents of at-risk 2nd grade students, just to kind of start getting, when you saw the numbers, we know that we have to do something now. We can't wait until they get to 3rd grade, and then provide them with materials and ideas for use in the home. And with that, I open it up to some questions that you might have about Move On When Reading. And I thank you for letting me talk with my froggy voice.
I have a couple of questions if nobody else has any. I'll let you guys. generate yours while I'm talking. So this might be more of a question for Joel and for Eric, so I don't want to put you on the spot here. So have we looked at the on-track data that's in the Ames, the A through F static download for second graders? Because I didn't notice the at-risk students being identified based on their second grade Stanford 10 scores. So are we using those data as well? We have not yet. Okay. So before we send out letters, we should definitely cross-reference that list. So in the Department of Education, in evaluating K-2 schools, identifies based on the Stanford 10 score in both math and reading, a score that gives them a probability of passing the third grade Ames. And now there's an indicator for all of our second graders, so those students who are now in third grade, for whom we have scores. And so I suspect that the large percentage of those we've already identified through our ISD screeners, as well as maybe even our pre-tests in third grade in ATI. But definitely want to double check and make sure that we don't have any students falling through, in that particular area, because that's an important set of data. But since the ADE runs it for us, it doesn't take much energy to kind of go in and take a look at that. So that's just one thing to add to the bucket. And then could you talk a little bit about, a bit more exactly about the structure for professional development? So you heard me mention in response to a couple of the comments from the administrators around the support that teachers need for implementing guided reading effectively, and in particular, not just conceptually what it is and the sort of the how-tos, but practically the hands-on setting up of centers. So in your K-3 academies, is that the level of detail that teachers are experiencing in the academy, or does that come later on?
That's a really good question. So last year we did not focus on K-3 literacy centers. We really focused on the structure and then how to deliver a guided reading lesson. So while they were with me, they actually sat, we took a lesson apart. We talked about each and every single component, and then we gave them time to practice delivering that guided reading lesson. And then the follow-up to that was then, once they had already practiced doing that, then how do you prompt the students so that it matches the intent of what you're trying to teach? So it's not just reading for reading's sake, but what you say matters. And so we practice that. But to answer your question about the literacy centers, no, we did not. And I would say that probably we had 2-3 teachers who wrote on their evaluations, I wish that we would have covered that. And so in thinking about this year's K-3 academies, I think especially because it's going to be for our new teachers, I think that there will definitely be a component of the how do you set them up, what kinds are the correct literacy centers that you should have, and then a rotation system. So it will be, all of the K-3 academies are about 3 hours. So within that, there will be an opportunity for them to probably not make and take, but have the general concepts, and then talk about a rubric of what would be an effective literacy center that then the principals can go out and really look for and give guidance and feedback to teachers.
Earlier, when you talked about the focus of the K-3 literacy work this year, was I correct in hearing that you said it would be all new teachers who were hired who have not gone through
Correct.
the training, and then also those teachers who are new to primary?
Correct.
Okay, so how will the teachers who already went through the K-3 literacies, and how will they then move forward as far as literacy
So
centers?
we're going to, I'm going to meet with each and every single one of the principals and talk, kind of see where everybody's at in terms of teachers. So one of the things that we are thinking about is having a refresher course. So it would not be that 6-week, that 6-time academy, but maybe 1 or 2 where we can really extend your thinking about possibly whether it's how to plan for a guided reading lesson, or how to deliver the guided reading lesson, or how to choose the appropriate text for guided reading lesson. So it's really going to be dependent on when we go out and see what we see. And then the professional development will be really geared towards the needs of those teachers who have gone through the K-3 academies. Absolutely.
So I'd like to just add a quick idea to that. One of the structures that we've been working with for several years, but we've really expanded this year, is triad learning communities that include all the members of the leadership team from each site. So, for example, today we worked with groups from, I'm not going to remember them all, we did 2 full schools leadership teams, and they're divided into focus groups on ELA and math. And the idea with this method is to ensure that the site leadership, including the principal, the assistant principal, coach, student achievement, teacher, title, and facilitator, are all well equipped to provide on the spot, just in time, coaching, strategy help, ideas, and references back to the trainings that we've received without having to dig for it or hunt for it. So a big piece of our professional development initiative this year is to ensure that the content for these modules is well known by the leadership on each campus. So that will help us sustain those efforts and make sure that they have an ongoing resource of support. That way, site leadership will be able to differentiate as needed based on the diversity of their teaching population.
You know, I also wanted to add that in terms of our existing staff that have gone through the K-3 academies, another way that we are looking at extending their knowledge is not just going to a refresher, but actually using master teachers that are at their sites so that they can go and observe and see and debrief with them. So it's not just coming from one source, but many different sources. We're tapping into as many strengths as we can. Other questions?
Miriam, can you talk a little bit about in Tier 2 and Tier 3 intervention, because those are all specific program-based interventions, the way that we collect progress monitoring data, in addition to, obviously we're doing ISTEEP regularly, but the program-specific monitoring data, and is that the SAT teacher's responsibility on the campus?
It's actually the Title I teacher's responsibility, and our reading interventionists are very well versed on how to progress monitor. So their goal is depending on well, actually all students are progress monitored once a week. The measure in which they are progress monitored depends on the program and whether they're a Tier 2 or Tier 3. So, for example, if they were in, I'm just going to call Quick Reads for a moment. Quick Reads is a program that really targets fluency and comprehension, and it is all with nonfiction text. And so the teachers are working on, so once a week they're doing oral reading fluency checks with the students, in addition to any program measures that, you know, every 10th lesson you're going to have a measure, but that gets reported onto the STEEP website, and then we're looking for trends and patterns, and teachers do, they have SMART goals, and so we're really tracking the progress of the students, and we're looking for trends and patterns, you know, 3, and then to make sure that, you know, it's going in the right direction, and if not, then we bring them to the RTI leadership team meetings.
Is it safe to assume that the schools that have the highest need currently probably have the highest number of the 68 students that are potentially on target to be retained?
Sad to say, but yes.
So part of the legislation, since I mean the good cause exemptions are good cause, but they're not really exemptions for, you know, all intents and purposes. There's very few students, as you mentioned, are likely to have been retained more than twice and been a special ed student and retained, and in our case been an ELL student for less than 2 full academic years. So you know, you're probably right, the vast majority of those students are on that target list. So that's obviously going to have a huge impact if we don't move those kids out of the false far below category, which hopefully we can at least move them all into approaches, if not into meets this year with all of this focused attention on them. But perhaps for a later conversation, as we get closer throughout the year and have some more understanding of how well we're moving those students, because retaining 68 students has a huge impact on class size and class configurations in those schools. And
Not to mention the
budget.
shoulders, they
And
hurt
not
from
to-
all that feet.
And not to mention all of that stress.
responsibility.
It's certainly something that we're going to have to have a conversation down the road if the scores don't improve. I have great hope that they will improve significantly based on the work. But
I would say that because we have an increased focus on A, guided reading, and B, every site has developed a site plan that really focuses not only on guided reading, but how are we going to track progress monitoring of those students. I think that we're really going to be able, because we have a real focus, like laser-like focus on these children. So I too have great hopes.
Other questions or comments? Move on with reading. If not, thank you. And we move on to